central banks and the truth and evil behind money. They set an interest rate on the loans and bonds, so they print money and loan them out to banks and charge them some interest. How did central banks get started? Where did they come from? And who owns them? It is very important to understand that the entire structure of this system can only produce one thing in the long run: debt. The founding fathers of this country were well aware of this. At that time, dominant families in the banking and business world were the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Warburgs, and the Rothschilds. Give this video a like, and if this video reaches 100 likes, I'll make a part 2 where I can get more deep into these families. Thank you for your patience, guys, and like promised, here is part 2. Don't forget to leave me a like. Also, share this video with some friends. It did take me quite some time to make this video, so spread the knowledge. The more people that know about this, the better. Hope you guys enjoy. By the early 20th century, the United States had already implemented and removed a few central banking systems, which were swindled into place by ruthless banking interests. At this time, the dominant families in the banking and business world were the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Warburgs, and the Rothschilds. And in the early 1900s, they sought to push once again legislation to create another central bank. However, they knew the government and the public were very wary about such an institution, so they needed to create an incident to affect the public opinion. So JP Morgan, who was publicly considered a financial luminary at the time, exploited his mass influence by publishing rumors that a prominent bank in New York was insolvent or bankrupt. Morgan knew this would cause mass hysteria, which would affect other banks as well, and it did. The public, in fear of losing their deposits, immediately began mass withdrawals. Consequently, the banks were forced to call in their loans, causing the recipients to sell their property. Causing a spiral of bankruptcies, repositions, and turmoil emerged. Putting the pieces together a few years later, Frederick Allen of Life magazine wrote, "The Morgan interest took advantage to precipitate the panic, guiding it shrewdly as it progressed." Unaware of the fraud, the Panic of 1907 led to a congressional investigation headed by Senator Nelson Aldrich, who had intimate ties to the banking cartels and later became part of the Rockefeller family through marriage. The commission led by Aldrich recommended a central bank should be implemented so a panic like 1907 could never happen again. This was the spark the international bankers needed to initiate their plan. In 1910, a secret meeting was held at a JP Morgan estate off the coast of Georgia on Jekyll Island. It was there that the central banking bill called the Federal Reserve Act was written. This legislation was written by bankers, not by lawmakers. This meeting was so secretive, so concealed from the government and public knowledge that the 10 or so people who attended disguised their names when en route to the island. After this bill was constructed, it was then handed over to their political frontman, Senator Nelson Aldrich, to push through Congress. And in 1913, with heavy political sponsorship by the bankers, Woodrow Wilson became president, having already agreed to sign the Federal Reserve Act in exchange for campaign support. And 2 days before Christmas, when most of the Congress was at home with their families, the Federal Reserve Act was voted in, and Wilson in turn made it law. Years later, Woodrow Wilson in regret said, "Our great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is privately concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men who necessarily, by very reason of their own limitations, destroy genuine economic freedom. We have come to be one of the worst ruled and one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and the duress of a small group of dominant men." And that was by Woodrow Wilson. Congressman Louis McFadden also expressed the truth about the passage of the bill. A world banking system was being set up here, a superstate controlled by international bankers, acting together to enslave the world for their own pleasure. The Fed had usurped the government. The public was told that the Federal Reserve System was an economic stabilizer, and inflation and economic crisis were a thing of the past. Well, as history has shown, nothing is further from the truth. The fact is, international bankers know how to streamline machine to expand their personal ambitions. For example, from 1914 to 1919, the Fed increased the money supply by nearly 100%, resulting in extensive loans to small banks and the public. Then in 1920, the Fed called in mass percentages of the outstanding money supply, resulting in the supporting banks having to call in huge number of loans. So just like 1907, bankruptcy and collapse occurred. Over 5,400 competitive banks outside of the Federal Reserve System collapsed, helping and growing the monopoly of the small group of international bankers. However, the panic of 1920 was just a warm-up. From 1921 to 1929, the Fed again increased the money supply, resulting once again in extensive loans to the public and bank. There was a new type of loan called a margin loan in the stock market. The margin loan allowed an investor to put down only 10% of the stock price, with the other 90% being loaned through the broker. In other words, a person can own $1,000 worth of stock with only $100 down. This method was really popular in the roaring 1920s as everyone seemed to be making money in the market. However, there was a catch to this loan. It could be called in anytime and had to be paid within 24 hours. This is called a margin call, and a typical result of a margin call is the selling of the stock purchased with the loan. So a few months before October 1929, J.D. Rockefeller, Bernard Baruch, and other insiders quietly exited the market. On October 24, 1929, the New York financiers who gave the margin loans started calling them in mass. This sparked an instantaneous massive sell-off in the market because everyone had to cover their margin loans. It then triggered mass bank runs for the same reason, in turn collapsing over 16,000 banks, enabling the conspiring international bankers to not only buy out rival banks at a discount, but to also buy out whole corporations at pennies on a dollar. It was the greatest robbery in American history. But that didn't stop there. Instead of expanding the money supply to recover from this economic collapse, the Fed actually contracted it, fueling one of the largest depressions in history. Once again outraged, Congressman Louis McFadden, a longtime opponent of the banking cartels, began impeachment proceeding against the Federal Reserve Board, saying of the crash and depression, "It was a carefully contrived occurrence. International bankers sought to bring about a condition of despair so that they might emerge the rulers of us all." Not surprisingly, and after 2 previous assassination attempts, McFadden was poisoned at a banquet before he can push for the impeachment. Now, having reduced society to poverty, the Federal Reserve bankers decided that the gold standard should be removed, and in order to do this, they needed to acquire the remaining gold in the system. So under the pretense of helping to end the depression came the 1933 gold seizure. Under the threat of imprisonment for 10 years, everyone in America was required to turn in all their gold to the treasury, essentially robbing the public from what little wealth they had left. And at the end of 1933, the gold standard was abolished. If you look at the dollar bill from before 1933, it said that it is redeemable in gold. You look at the dollar bill today, it says it is legal tender, which means it is backed by absolutely nothing. It is worthless paper. The only thing that gives our money value is how much of it is in circulation. Therefore, the power to regulate the money supply is also the power to regulate its value, which is also the power to bring entire economies and societies to its knees. Well, that's it for now, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It did take me a lot of time and a lot of effort to make this video, so please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to share this video with a friend, and if you guys want to see a part 3, let's get to 150 likes and I'll do a part 3. I'm probably going to do a poll, so I'm going to choose a couple subjects. For example, we could talk about the Rothschilds family. We could talk about the world wars, for example, World War I, World War II, and how these families were involved in them. There's many options. I'm going to do a poll. You guys can vote which one part 3 could be about. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you're not subscribed, don't forget to hit that notification bell and smash that subscribe button. And that's it for now, guys. Bye bye.